the next speaker of the day is Jay. I will let Jay introduce himself, but just a short introduction. He works as an Agile Delivery Manager at Cognizant. And he's going to make pigs fly, okay? All right, Jay, stage's yours.
Yeah,
Okay.
chickens fly.
Okay, is that clear enough? There could be a back, everyone. Okay, so yes, title-wise, I am an Agile Delivery Manager. I've been a Scrum Master, been doing a bit of coaching for a few years, been working in Agile Scrum for about 6 years now. But more than thinking in terms of titles, I think of myself as being probably the disruptor around the place. As some of you who know me around the place, I tend to break the rules and see what new ones really work out for everybody. That's one of the reasons I do that, is because I believe that environments are not stable, so rules shouldn't be stable either. And part of the reason for coming up with this topic was because I've come across a lot of people who talk about very good tools or methods for doing retrospectives and getting the team to actually execute retrospectives well. In spite of which, and I've seen some really good Scrum Masters execute these on the ground as well. But at the end of it, I still run into this challenge where in a few months, the teams start looking jaded, even with different techniques being used. Part of it is because they believe that there's not much change that they can do, or the fact that the small changes that they come up with sprint on sprint are not really enough to really cause enough change around them to make them feel comfortable with spending that time or energy in it. So they feel that there's not enough value in the smaller changes, and you find the participation tends to start dropping over a period of time. And this is in spite of, like I said, good Scrum Masters, good techniques and tools being used. So the challenge that came up was, why does this really happen? Right? So when we ran into that challenge, we started speaking to people, trying to figure out what comes up. And the clear answer we got back is, look, these are small changes. Yes, it helps us and it's nice to see these changes happen. But, we're not exactly changing the world. We're not coming up with creative stuff. We're not geniuses.
Can you please repeat the challenge? What is the challenge?
So the challenge that I saw was that over a period of time, people did not believe that the changes they were making would really amount to anything large or different. They believed that they were not creative enough. They look up to this idea of genius and say that I'm not one. I'm not a Jobs. I'm not a Mozart. All of these are small things. Do I really need to be in here? Am I really contributing enough? Right? So unless you have a certain level of self-belief that changes you make are going to improve stuff, that's not really going to come into play. And that started me off on a path where I started looking around saying, how do I actually validate that small changes do work? So I started reading upon multiple sources, materials, and I found multiple sources which said one clear thing. Said that genius by itself, the way we perceive or see it, is not the same as it is. And as we go through in the next few minutes, we'll understand why these people are saying so. There's a lot of data, there's a lot of surveys backing up some of these things, and I now call it the myth of genius. Right? It's actually more of a myth than pure play, somebody being very different. Why am I saying that? Okay, let's start with naming a few people that some of you would call as geniuses. Can you just throw out a few names that you can think of geniuses across the ages? Who would you think of as a genius?
Albert Einstein.
Einstein?
Modi.
Sorry.
Buddha.
Buddha? Okay.
Myself.
Possible? At the end of 20 odd minutes, you're going to agree with that too. Or how you get all of them to agree with that too. George? Yeah. Edison? Yes. So why do you call them geniuses? They stand out, yes. Okay. Why else?
So they did something extraordinary.
They achieved something extraordinary.
They thought something big.
Thought something big. Okay.
And achieved. And achieved.
And achieved it. Yes.
If I can say, they persisted on what they were persistent.
I don't think anybody really counts that. Though it's very important, people don't count the number of attempts being made to actually make it.
One thing I think is like they learn from it. They've made an impact.
They've made an impact, right? So it's an end output. Okay. Now we take that thing of persistence for a minute and we return to it later, but as simple as this, there are probably thousands of people who are trying to invent stuff or do stuff differently, right? You hear only of some of them. The ones who succeed, you call them genius. The ones who succeed are geniuses. The ones who don't succeed, you probably call them fools, stupid, or ignore them. The persistence is there in both of them. The only differentiator becomes the output, right? So we look at an example of some of these examples of genius and some of the things that people have heard of about them. You hear these legendary stories, you see them in the movies, you see things come up out of nowhere and and then you say, that was genius. That's something I don't do. I can't visualize it this way. I can't come up with these things this way. So let's look at a few examples and then dissect how they got there. And then let's see if genius is just because of output or because of other factors as well. And then let's see how we can translate that to our teams and whether they should have self-belief. Okay, so this is an early painting of Mozart when he was 8 years old. This was one of his first performances in front of the royal family in Vienna. I've been fortunate enough to actually visit the same room and witness a Mozart performance there. But that's just coincidence. But at 8 years of age, he actually played before the Queen. He's one of those people who's normally in the category of genius. And if you see a movie called Amadeus, which was made about his life, they start showing him composing stuff in his head, and then he just runs over to a paper and starts writing down entire symphonies and operas by himself. Hardly a correction being done. So, in the 1850s, there was a letter that was published out to a magazine that described his creative process. It said that, when I'm sleeping or resting, I spend time by myself in isolation and I can hear these entire strains of music in my head. Where different instruments join in, how it goes up, arias, and all of those things. And then I just wake up and I just go and document the whole thing. So it's sheets and sheets of music just being documented right there. And when you think about it, most of us can't imagine a song like that. You can hear one piece of it in your head sometimes, but imagine composing the whole song in your head and being able to pull that thing together. Right? So that does sound like genius. Right? So, yeah, maybe he did it that way. That was what the letter said. And that started creating, or rather, I would say that's probably the first documentation of the genius myth. That, okay, this is something we can't do. This is something a genius can do. Remember, such complex stuff, or come up with such complex stuff while he's asleep and just start writing stuff. Right? I don't know if you've heard of this guy. This is a Russian painter called Kandinsky, early 1920s. Some very expensive paintings if you want to buy one now, probably cost you a few million. And I don't really understand art, but it's supposed to be one of the most expensive pieces that he's made. So he was traveling in Russia when, he was in Moscow when they had a war with Serbia and stuff like that. And he tried to capture his wild emotions at that point of time. So this painting is about 30 feet. And he walked into a gallery one day in the morning and spent the next 20 hours just painting this all 30 feet length, the whole thing. And one shot without a single correction, just started painting with brushed fingers and just finished the whole thing off. Right? And people who witnessed it were like, that must be genius. Start to finish 18 hours straight, such a big canvas to be able to execute it, absolutely awesome. Even other painters have taken years to finish masterpieces. One shot, 30 feet, huge thing to do. Right? Very famous poem, I don't know if any of you read it, Kubla Khan, Coleridge. So there's this story behind how Coleridge came up with this thing. He was asked about it and he says, and this is an unfinished poem by the way. He says he was sitting in a stupor at his farmhouse because he was not feeling well. And he started hearing all of these lines. And then he got disturbed by somebody, he woke up and wrote down everything that he could remember. And then he could never get that thing back and again. So the poem stays unfinished, but it's one of the most famous poems that you have around the place. Again, it's called the mark of a genius. Literally getting up and being able to write a poem of 80 or 90 lines at one shot, that's regarded as an absolute classic. Again, something that most of us would turn around and say, we can't do this by ourselves, we wouldn't be able to get up and do this by ourselves. These are stories that create the legends of genius. You look around and say that this is not something an ordinary guy would do. These are masterpieces that are being generated literally on the fly. It's, even that idea of a light bulb, and I think you guys had it in the video early on, the introductory video, light bulbs going on. That comes from a character known as Felix the Cat. It was the most popular cartoon character before Mickey Mouse took over. And while nobody remembers Felix, but Felix used to take ordinary objects and turn them into something. The transition would be shown with the light bulb going on, and then he would turn something into something else. So the concept of an idea and a light bulb association came from there, right? So right now we remember the light bulb, nobody remembers Felix, but that's the background behind the entire thing. So the entire concept of ideas happening suddenly, the concept of geniuses having these ideas that get converted into something that is an awesome end product that impacts all of us. That created this entire myth of genius, that it is possible to do it that way. But honestly, when you look at it, the answers behind some of these things are very, very revealing. Let's look at some of the outputs. Right? This is one thing that most people tend to believe. Creativity and genius being hand in hand. Right? Does it really work that way? Let's look at the same examples that I quoted. Each of them are lovely stories to listen to and feel that genius exists in that manner. But let's look at, some of the fonts good, but it says the Mozart letter was fake. It never was written by Mozart at all. It was written by some admirer of his who thought this is the way he did it. His actual correspondence to his family, to his brothers, to his cousins shows how he did it. He composed each one of those arias and stanzas and orchestras, line by line, every instrument separately, every one of them taking hours of work and effort and multiple iterations of tweaking it. You run something, doesn't work, change it again, do it again, change it again, do it again. It's taken him months and months of effort to come up with each. There's not a single piece of work he's done getting up from his sleep and writing 30 pages of music on the sheets. It's never really happened. All his work has been the result of a lot of hard work, a lot of applying his inborn talent to actually execute it to that level. None of it has happened at the first shot. And when you read his original letters, you start realizing the difference that is there. In fact, the letter was debunked within 10 years of first publication, but everybody ignored that part of it and kept going with the fake letter. So the fake letter has been quoted for about 150 years now. But the rebuttal, which proves that the letter was fake, was quoted only once in 1856. Which is why, that's where the myth started, that things could be done on the fly. Right?
Sensationalize happened that time itself.
It's easy for us to associate. We like believing those stories. We like, heroic stories, genius stories. It's easy to associate and say, that's something, right? People pick it up and it gets propagated. So the letter part of it is quoted in about 14 to 15 books, multiple movies. But the rebuttal for the letter has never been quoted anywhere except the first magazine where it was printed. The Kandinsky painting. Okay? So 18 hours under stretch, yes, he did it live. Okay? So these guys then went back and tried to find out how he did it. 70 years plus later. And nowadays you can X-ray paintings and see multiple layers, right? To see how they have actually built it. So if you paint one layer of paint and then after it dries paint one more and you do an X-ray, you can see multiple layers there. If you paint over it 6 times, you'll see 6 layers in the X-ray. So now it's possible to analyze these things. The finished painting, and this painting is called painting with the white border. The finished painting has only one layer, which means he did paint it from start to finish with one shot. But there are 6 interim versions called sketch 1 to 5 that are also available in other museums, which are hardly ever on display, where he has experimented, and when you X-ray those, there are between 5 to 18 layers of paint on each of them. He's thought about each one of them, and it is an incredibly complex painting, by the way. The yellow that you're seeing is a mix of 6 shades of yellow. The white that is used in the background is done with natural charcoal that is thousands of years old. He did not want the artificial charcoal based on it. So this specific stuff he's asked for that on the canvas because he's experimented on smaller canvases before. He has spent 6 years and 6 different sketches figuring out the layers, getting the shades right, getting the forms right in different pieces, and then integrating it together on one day to create the masterpiece. What people have seen is just the last day, the last masterpiece. But each of the 6 interim sketches, you can see multiple layers when the X-rays come. Again, end output, absolutely mind-blowing, call it an output of a genius, but did he get there at one shot? Not really. Right? It's taken thousands of hours of work to end up creating this. Kubla Khan, it's original writing there. Okay? The story for him being in a stupor and doing this was set about by Coleridge himself. 15, 18 years after his death, in his personal effects, people found copies of the same poem in an earlier version, at least 10 years before it was published. There's no way he could have actually come up with that completely by himself. It's a story he put out, and like I said, we all like believing these stories to connect. You know, it sounds like genius when you hear of these things. People latch on to those stories much more than they actually do about finding how they came up with it. There are 4 versions of Coleridge poem before he came up with that, and probably the story gave him a good excuse to say why he never completed the poem, because he couldn't figure out a way to do it. So he just said, in my dream I got interrupted and that's where it stopped, and that's been the myth and the legend since then, almost a century now. But he never really finished the poem, and he probably worked on it for at least 10 years in multiple versions. Never got done. What's there? Still incredible output, it's still genius, but again, did he get there in one step? Not really. Okay. I know the first one's easy to identify. What about the other 2? Who are the other 2 guys? First one's Einstein, second one's a name most of you will know, Stephen King.
Oh, yes. Alright.
Yes. Stephen King. Last guy is a guy called Thomas Paine. He's a philosopher. He was beheaded sometime around in the French Revolution. Okay, so let's look at reasons behind why a lot of our teams or people say that they cannot really, is it really worth it, do they really want to do more, is it really worth the time or the value to retrospect and try and improve. So one of the things that people come up with is that, there's not much time to spare. Even if you put them in the retrospective, they're in a hurry to get on to the next thing. Let's look at the examples of these 3 guys. Okay, what is Einstein's best known work? Theory of relativity. Okay, when did he come up with it? I mean, not timeline, but do you think he was sitting at home just thinking of the theory of relativity? Do you know what his day job was? He was a patent clerk at the Swiss patent office. And for 15 years while he was sitting processing patents, he used to also work on his theory of relativity. What got published in 1910 was a result of 15 years of work outside of his day job, thinking about how things would come together. Right? Let's look at the other one, Stephen King. Very famous now, probably multi-millionaire for decades by now, but his first book. Do you know what he was employed as when he wrote his first book? He used to work in a laundromat. He used to sit in the back room of the laundromat when he didn't have to clean the place, and he wrote his first book out there. That's where he started from. And then over the next 20 years, he wrote 40 more books. Average of 2,000 words a day. And in the 2,000 words a day, if you count it, he eliminates about 50% of the words on revision. So multiple iterations, again, and a lot of hard work that goes into improvements to get to those really high quality pieces of work that he does. Thomas Paine, in jail at the time of the French Revolution, eventually beheaded or was on the queue for the guillotine, wrote his best philosophical works sitting out there in the Bastille. You can imagine that it's easy to give up at that stage, not easy to think of a life beyond, but his best works came out of there. So you can't really talk about no time. You can't really talk about not being special. You don't know you're special till you get to an output. There's no point in concluding you can't come up with something brilliant just because you don't even start. That's probably the only guarantee that you can't come up with something good. That's why I said there is a genius in each one of us. And to Albert's point about persistence, yes, hundreds of attempts. So these days you have these vacuum cleaners that have suction, and you can see that the air that it pulls is being blown in circles. It's like having a mini whirlwind or cyclone inside the vacuum cleaner, right? The guy who invented that, the previous vacuum cleaners were not very good. The guy who invented that and made billions out of patent that came out of it, do you know the number of attempts it took before he got it right? 5,126 attempts at creating a controlled whirlpool inside a vacuum cleaner before he got it right. Today he's worth billions. You think he's a genius for having invented it, but 5,000 plus attempts isn't small. It's a lot of persistence, it's a lot of hard work to actually get it there. Right? And if you had met him at the start, you would have thought of him as ordinary. Now you would think of him as genius. So another thing that comes out of genius is this entire leap to getting to a conclusion. This is how it should work. This is how it will work. I think with all of these examples, it's fairly clear. The mind works with observation and evaluation and then gets to the next step and keeps doing step after step till it gets to the right level. So there's no point in assuming that you can just make this big leap. That is a myth again that our movies, our stories, our legends create. And it ends up creating an impression to the rest of us that because we are not capable of such leaps, we are not geniuses, whatever we contribute cannot really have the same level of value. That's not true. Each one of them did every small step on the way before they got there. The Wright brothers, one of the most famous examples of completely coming up with something. They were not the only ones designing aircraft. There were Germans who managed to fall to their death from 50 feet and so. And I think the German guy who died, I don't remember his name, but his last words were, "Sacrifices must be made." To which the Wright brothers, when they read about it, thought that not that sort of sacrifice. We don't want to kill us in trying to fly. We want to actually fly safely. But this is the aircraft that actually flew. But if you see the earlier diagrams of the earlier aircraft, you can see the incremental improvements. You can see the things that are getting added on. They worked for 8 years on this. They were experts at making bicycles. And that's where they started. So on a bicycle, even though most of us can ride it comfortably, the question is one of balance. And you're constantly adjusting and shifting to maintain balance. The problem is the same in the air. Every aircraft made before them had a V-type shape for the wings, because everybody was trying to imitate the birds. These guys realized that the question was not about the shape of the wings, the question was one of stability. The birds were using the wings and making those adjustments the same way people ride bicycles. And they took that thought forward to be able to create multiple versions. It still took them 6 years of making versions before they could do it. The one place where they had a head start was the propeller, because boats had propellers, so they started with understanding the flow of water and using that to predict how air would flow. So the propeller that they made then to the ones that are used in aircraft today are still very, very similar. Very little improvement has been made on them, but all the other areas were pretty much new. Again, incrementally, they understood how much of this was required. They understood how much of wingspan was required, that it needed to be much, much bigger. So you can see the wingspan expanding, you can see the detailing coming out more and more, you can see the tail come up to be able to give direction. Every year they improved on it till they finally ended up with taking off and managing to fly. After it flew, genius. Before that, there were 50 other guys with them. You don't remember the names of any of them. All of them worked very hard. There's also an example of the guy who made the first parachute. The demo was done from the Eiffel Tower. The first layer of the Eiffel Tower is 360 steps up. And this guy took a parachute, attached a 160-pound dummy and dumped it over, and the parachute deployed. And it worked. So the photograph in the paper showed a person coming down on a parachute. It wasn't a person, it was a dummy, but it was a safe test. There was an Austrian tailor who was also trying to do the same thing. So So next year he took it as a challenge. He actually walked up with just a backpack and the parachute. Right? He walked up to the same place, put a chair, and the guy who did the original parachute actually came there to see the demo and told him, look, your measurements are wrong. It will not hold up. After a 10-minute argument, this guy walks away and tells him that once I jump, all your questions will be answered. He goes up, stands on the chair, and jumps. And the photograph in the paper next day shows something like a closed umbrella coming down. He fell straight to his death. He fell for 4 seconds, straight down, flat on his face, and died. The issue was that his measurements were wrong. He had been told by the guys who were running gliders, they had an aeronautical society in France. He had been told that the surface area isn't enough. In fact, their response to his design was very clear. They said, if you jump, you will break your neck. These are the exact words that they had used. He preferred to ignore them. He ignored data coming out of his own experiments as well. His parachute was only 180 square feet. The minimum required is about 360. The minimum height for deployment should be about 350 feet. This guy jumped it at 200 square feet. 200 feet high. Just jumped the staircase. So there's a lesson in that you have belief, that's fine. Look at the data, associate both, use the results and improve.
One more point to add on is that every time they took a flight, they had 5 cycle parts of the same part where they used to go in and do the experiment and come back, because they knew that one cycle part would not give them. So again, adding on to the iteration aspect.
Yes, each section of that has been improved iteratively. We are just seeing the overall picture here, but each part individually also has gone through multiple iterations before it has gone through. So, way I concluded and what I saw out of a lot of the other research that I looked at also, there's no such thing as creative thinking. It's thinking that results in creativity. You need to think first, you cannot be creative first. You start thinking, you get to be creative. The refusal to think, the refusal to believe that something useful can come out of the thinking will get you nowhere. You need to have that level of self-belief that says that when I think I can come up with something, I don't need to be a Mozart or a Steve Jobs to be able to do it. Yes, I would like to have a vision. These guys wanted to fly, Jobs wanted something that was easy to use. You could think of something like IoT, like 30 years ago. There's some of the speeches in the mid-80s that talk of interconnected devices. So yes, there's a lot of stuff that you can dream of, but unless you think about it and start moving towards it, you won't get there. And whether it's software or particularly inside retrospectives or how you do your daily job, being willing to take the time and the energy to think is important. Being willing to be obsessive and persistent about it is important. For being obsessive, let's take an example of a German researcher who wanted to interview 275 people who had won Nobel Prizes, who are generally regarded as geniuses and so on. He wrote out to 275 people. About 120 of them wrote back refusing. Another 130 of them did not even bother writing back. The ones who wrote back were very clear. I don't have time to fund your research because I have more interesting stuff to do here. I'm short of time, life is short, I'm wanting to work on this instead. I don't want to tell you my method of doing it because I need the time to actually execute my own methods. But the methods are pretty much the same. Try again, you fail, yes, fix it, move on, fix it, move on. The guy who did the vacuum cleaner says, I have 5,126 steps of learning. Each step of failure got me to somewhere better. So failure by itself, I think the source for the word failure comes from a word called faleur. It's like Greek or something, Greek or Latin. It actually means deceit. It means to make somebody feel that they're down. The idea is not to feel failure or make it feel down. Failure is probably your best step towards getting to a successful position. And that is what you need to really instill in your teams. Because you don't want somebody dumping on them to keep improving.
While you're saying this, I just remembered something which I would like to share with everyone. I think Thomas Alva Edison, before he actually invented the bulb, I think 10,000 times is when he failed. And when he was questioned, why do you keep trying even after failing so many times? So he told, it is 10,000 times when I learned how not to make a bulb.
Exactly.
And that's when he came up inventing something that changed.
Same pattern repeated again, right? So these guys, before they get to genius, have actually reached out and put in the effort, the hard work, yes, creativity, thinking is also work. Work leads to better output. So there's no point in not doing it. Right? So I probably have to send this out separately because it's too messed up, but yes, the process of creation is ordinary, even if the output is not. At the end, somebody can call you a genius or a good inventor or somebody who came up with something new, but the process of getting there is as ordinary as it gets. We need to work at it, we need to try it, we need to improve on it, we need to learn from it. As long as you're doing it, you will reach somewhere. And this is one of the messages I give back to my team, saying that you need to have a certain level of self-belief to keep going at it. Yes, the world won't like you. Who cares? At the end, when you're done with it, you'll know what you have managed to achieve. But if you don't try at all, don't expect to ever get there. Right?
Talking about the genius, one simple thing I would like to say is like your examinations, right? You have written your examination. How many of you not go through your results? Like I received a paper, have you written your exam? Okay, next time I may need to correct my mistakes. So whenever you write an exam, you expect to look it back and see what are the mistakes I have done, I will correct. This is the same thing we follow.
Please don't fail that often, but I did. I
See,
failed a lot.
even if you pass, you would like to know like what I have done, right? Is anybody there who never looked into the examinations?
I studied in Bombay, they never used to give us the answer sheets, but we all wanted to know what
Yes,
it is to
see,
do.
yeah, that's exactly what I mean.
Yeah.
Definitely.
To add to that concept, like what in Scrum we say adapt and
Expect and adapt.
yes, adapt. That's what I believe these people would have also done. Whichever the grid
They have, yeah.
inspected and adapted.
Exactly.
And it all goes in an iteration or sprints.
Add to your third, there is one idea proposed by the famous author of Polgar Sisters, the famous grandmaster, chess grandmaster. So he has proposed an idea like any healthy child can be made into a genius. Like he wrote a book on that saying bring it genius, bringing of genius. So he is essentially experimented with that idea of collaborated, you can say as a collaboration with a teacher and actually made these three daughters of his into chess grandmasters that world now.
So that brings up something slightly different. I know we are almost out of time, so I'll just take a minute on that. So typically people believe ideas just pop out of nowhere, right? The light bulb concept. That's not really very true either, right? Because every idea is built on a series of other ideas that have come out. So Newton said, I'm standing on the shoulders of giants. Yes, a lot of the theories of physics he came up with were built up with other people before, right? And he reached different conclusions, but he built on top of those ideas. The funny part is even that line, standing on the shoulders of giants, well, there are 4 other people who have used it before him in different formats. The earliest format is like 500 years before him. So even the line he used iteratively progressed before it was quoted by him. We think of it as Newton saying it, but there are 4 other guys who have said it. The earliest instance is somewhere around the 1200s or so. So yes, there's no such thing as a original idea that has an inception by itself. It's always built on top of other ideas that come along, right? So you're always building on top of somebody else's idea. So there's no such thing as true originality in that sense. So I would challenge everybody to let go of the entire myth of needing to be a genius to be able to achieve something, and take it as being able to work towards something to be able to get to the level of genius later.
But as a societal thing, we value what is an output and we rate it back to being a genius, rather than rating it to the effort and then saying it is a genius.
Correct. Nobody asks you what effort you're putting in. It's only when the output shows that somebody will call you a genius or like it or otherwise. But the thing is, when you're working day to day, okay, you have to still put in the effort. You can't wait for everybody to acknowledge saying you're trying very hard, so let's applaud you before you achieve something.
So it's actually the show and tell that determines you are a genius or not then.
Not really show and tell. Yes, I would agree that in some places there are people who have invented and nobody's ever heard of them. For example, if I ask you who invented the radio, what would be the name most of you come up with?
Marconi. Okay. But if you go back to the US Patent Office in a case in the US Supreme
Yes.
Court, you'll find out that Tesla was awarded the patent 10 years later. Tesla had invented it a decade before Marconi came up with it. Now, does not mean Marconi did not also invent the radio, he just did it 10 years later. A lot of times, the environment creates situations in which similar ideas come from multiple locations, and the same thing is created by multiple people and completely independent of each other. Nobody's stealing. Nobody's saying Marconi stole from Tesla. Tesla just did it first. But people remember Marconi's name because that was what was publicized then.
He's a better marketer. He marketed.
I mean, it's also an environment thing, you know.
He sold his idea. That's it.
Better timing out.
Timing.
It's the time to market.
Yeah.
Linking this back to Scrum, I would say iterative development with faster feedback cycle is what's work.
Yes, so what happens is a lot of us learned Agile and Scrum the textbook way, somebody taught us, we saw some of it working on the ground. But the more I've looked into research that supports it, I'm finding that it's very solidly supported. You won't find it in the material that you read up or even from some of the best people around. This is actually creating those links back. But if you look at it, the methods that we are already using are fairly mature simply because when you look at the studies and the data behind it, even without the linkages, you can create the linkages yourself. It's actually very solid. You're working on something that is proven by multiple studies in multiple ways. And most of our basic processes support the data coming out of that. We've just not realized it. We realized it because yes, we see some impact on the ground. But the reasons why some of us feel lost when these questions come back from the team is because we can't throw some of this back at them. If you say that these are all the examples where it shows that it works, it gives you a much solid ground than saying this is the process in the textbook and we should follow it. Right? Even you may have belief, but translating that belief to them is a different thing. So I might have exposure to 15 teams and I see a pattern. They are in one team, they don't have that exposure. And there may be dysfunctional things in the environment that stop them from seeing it. These are things that will help you bring up that level of belief that says, keep at it. We are going somewhere, we will get there. And you will see the results.
Jay, to add to that, I think some gentleman told a few minutes back that any single 10,000 times repeat. But it doesn't, in terms of Scrum, it says change. If you keep doing the same thing again and again and again and again, like the liberal team saying, then you're not failing. I guess Scrum doesn't work for me. But whether you're changing your approach, whether you're trying to that's one actually very important factor.
It is, but I'll also tell you one more thing, okay? People hate change. By nature, humans are wired to not take up change because change most likely means danger. That's how our genes are wired up. That's how our natural instincts are. A very different survey that I ran into, okay? Teachers say they like creative kids. If you ask teachers, and the survey was conducted across 7 or 8 countries, they said we like the creative kids, okay? And then when people came up with solutions, they found out that the teachers liked the high IQ kids. They were quieter and gave them less trouble, not the more creative ones that gave them very different solutions. And this is a pattern across multiple countries, multiple surveys, multiple age groups of teachers, consistent data coming back. So when people say that yes, change is good, some of us might believe in it, the vast majority will still be resistant to change. So you need a certain level of belief to be bullheaded and keep pushing against it to make things happen.
I think about change, it matters where it's originating. If it's coming from outside, that's where it gets resistant.
That's the ownership
If it's
principle.
internal,
Right.
If it's internal, it's the people who
So again, which is very solidly supported in the way, you know, it's self-empowered teams that we work in and they are supposed to come up with these things and implement it themselves. There's also Eliyahu Goldratt who has the same principle of how to do sales. You sell it in a way where your customer thinks it's his idea to buy it in first place. That's how the ownership comes in. It's the same concept that we're using here.
That's why most of the startups fail. Because what they do is they're passionate about something, they build it, but it's not required in the marketplace.
Yes, or sometimes they're too early or too late. It goes both ways.
Of that thing. Not even of that thing.
Yeah.
I can take an example in the Indian market itself. Hyundai had this car that was better than the Santro, right? I forget the name of that model. Gets. Gets was a couple of lakhs more expensive and nobody wanted to buy it. Okay. 4 years later, the market matured enough where they could do a 920, which was basically a Gets with a little better styling, and everybody wanted to buy it. So they were too early with that change. So there are other factors that keep coming in, but you've got to keep trying. Right now, you have Mercedes who has a car of that size. I don't even know why the Merc would want to make a car of that size, but it's available. Any other comments? You guys want to start?
What about pigs? Are we going to see them fly? No.
You got to help them fly. I've given you enough to give them stories to make them feel better about it. To have a certain level of self-belief that each of these guys that they look up to as inventors, innovators, geniuses, started out from pretty much the same place as each of our people in our teams are. The end output will matter, but the potential to be a genius is there in each one of us. And that is the self-belief that you need to, in most cases, get ingrained into the thinking of your teams before you start seeing them, own up these things. Otherwise, they'll attend a retro and give suggestions because you are asking them to. You really want them dragging you into the room, or whether you're there or not doing the same job, right?
Last question out of curiosity. The presentation was very good, but all your text is on your images. Is it on purpose?
Yeah, it's our mistake.
No, not really. There are two parts to it. Okay, one is the font I sent you. That became a bit of a screw up, and you guys can get a PDF emailed out later maybe, or put it up for download or something like that. The second thing is, yes, it is images because I prefer working with images. I'd rather have you guys listening to what I'm saying than reading stuff on the screen for the next, for the half an hour period. So I deliberately keep it down to one line or an image or two, just to give the background. That's all.
Alright, I have a couple of announcements. I will be distributing the quiz questions. If you get them right, or if you're closer to getting them right, then there's a pen drive awaiting for you with a Scrum Bangalore nice logo that's at the end. The chai point that we used to deliver tea for us are expecting some trouble at their location, so no chai point tea today. They only have one coffee machine that is running. My apologies for it. But some of our organizing team has already gone to the cafeteria to see if we can get some choice later on. Alright? But we will try to get what we can. And also, if you turn the brochure, those are some of the openings that we have at Prowareness. If you would like to work with us, contact anybody on the organizer t-shirt and we will guide you. What's the Wi-Fi user ID and password? It's the same, right? The user ID, the SSID is the same and the password is the same. Do we know our YouTube channel? Do we know our YouTube channel? Okay, cool. Scrum BLR. SCRUM BLR. And do we know our slide share? Okay, that is Scrum_BLR. Okay, so all these presentations will be shared on those channels, and the slides will be made available for your download. So don't worry about taking notes, unless you really want to. Hey, writing notes helps me memorize or remember. Yeah, if you want to do that, please do that. So I will distribute the quiz questions. Please fill them up, and it's open book. You can Google, try to find it. You can also try talking to others and see if you can get answers from others. After filling it up, there's a lucky draw box placed over that table. There's a white box, so please drop them over there. Write your phone number, name, so in case you're left when we give the prices, we will call your phone. Pass it on, please. And break after it. We will be back at 12:10. That's all right. Okay? 12:10.